first things that I read that I was like, oh man, that is hot, was one of your ideas where you said, living in this mostly post-Christian world, we are led to believe that tolerance is essentially the highest good, and that you simplified it by saying one thing that we all agree on is that Nazis are bad and therefore tolerance is good. Break that idea down, because it is a little bit mind-bending for me.
Yeah, I think it's our culture, kind of like, global homogenized culture's attempt to have a bit of an epistemology, a bit of a consensus on what is true. And I think that the truest thing historically that everyone can pinpoint and that everyone has as an anchor is the Second World War. It's kind of relatively fresh in our collective imagination. It, conjures the most demonic aspects of humanity. It's like an incontrovertible evil. Because, there is, kind of this unifying Western Christianity. It's kind of a bit passé now. Most people are not either a-religious or not really that tied into religion. So it's kind of become, it's morphed into this, core moral principle that, we know this because this is our reference point. And tied to that, Nazis are bad, there's also the concept of, you need tolerance to make the global economy work. You essentially, for us to play together, tolerance must be the highest virtue. So I think that it's kind of an interplay between that. So, the decaying of Christianity, because that's not a guiding principle anymore, historical freshness, and also the fact that it's quite conducive to the global playing together that we kind of have to do as being part of the global economy. So tolerance is number one virtue, and kind of to the exclusion of all others.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing because tolerance is a little bit like liberty, in that liberty has this weird function that the only way it's valued is if people choose to value it. You can't force people to love liberty or to prioritize liberty, because if they make the trade-off for safety, for example, then you no longer have liberty. Liberty is either number one or it's nothing. And when tolerance gets pushed up into the number one priority spot, then all of a sudden, all of these other axioms or beliefs that you could have from Christianity now start getting sorted underneath that in some really unusual ways. So if you're coming from a Christian faith, the idea of tolerance isn't repellent in the beginning, but when you vault it all the way up to the primary spot, things get weird.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you said, it does warp every other interpretation of reality, because it also warps power, because that's kind of what you see with this, this wall of woke, and essentially, you kind of have to play the tolerance game and to kind of signal that you're the most tolerant, and you're tolerant of these groups and all these other groups. And now it's kind of fracturing into, how many groups can you be tolerant of? And you must do it in a very visual and very, wonderful way, and as publicly as possible, to declare your allegiance to all these new groups. And it's kind of the machinations of power. This is now the face of it. This is the luxury belief that you must have if you want to be part of the upper class, is to be extremely tolerant in a visible way of all these, up and coming groups that need extra tolerance, or at least we're told they need extra tolerance, or they need to be protected from other people that are less tolerant, we're told.
Yeah, and there's that weird kind of cultural thing where, the swastika itself, you should not be tolerant of that or anything around intolerance. But then you juxtapose that against something like the hammer and the sickle, and that is, hey, this should be acceptable, or people in college campuses could wear it around on their shirts. I've been to places where the hammer and sickle is still up on the wall, and it's just one of those things where we have tolerance for some things and not for others. It's weird how those came up.
Yeah, I think it's also, it's in a way it's no problem, or at least it's not that important that, the communists or communism in general, ended up killing more people than the Nazis could ever think of killing. It's the idea that in what name were they killed? They were under communism was all about, brotherhood and equality and holding hands. The Nazis were more explicit in their dark tendencies. And I think that's what people, kind of like, at least the communists had good intentions. And I think it's a lot about about, good intentions and professed virtue. Because if people know, or at least that they know that you're virtuous, then there's kind of this thing where, at least we all agree that, good things are good and bad things are bad. And that's how we know that we're part of this class of people who make these distinctions. Though most people, any normal person makes these distinctions, but this particular class makes them in a very, visible way.
Yeah, and I know that you are a reader of Nassim Taleb, and I think I have a similar kind of love-hate thing with him. I find his bravado to be really aggressive and something that's hard for me to understand, but he has some ideas that are brilliant, and one of them is the concept of the intransigent minority, right? Where there is a group of people that have a story in their head about the way the world ought to be, and they will just keep yelling and screaming and not accepting anything other than their way. And then what ends up happening is the middle of society that's like, oh, just give them a little bit, just, give into that one demand. And then it just keeps moving further and further. Do you agree that this is kind of where woke culture comes from, or the reason woke culture has become so strong, maybe?
Yeah, I think so, because if you think about the whole system and everyone who's participating in it, the intransigent minority, especially when it's something tied to moral values, where, your downside is very, very, very deep. If someone actually points you out as, a moral defector, that you're someone who's, unacceptable socially, but your upside, even if it's small, if you're virtue signaling just a little bit, is good enough for you to post, your Black BLM things or whatever is needed, whatever profession is required this month. And even the upside is a little bit, and people do it sometimes just, because they want to, hedge the downside, which can be catastrophic now because it's kind of been set up by this even small, the first mover had to be very small because the downside so catastrophic. People end up pushed into this direction just by the sheer momentum of it.
Have you had the mob come after you for anything you've said?
Not yet. Not yet. I mean, depends what you call a mob. I've had, detractors. I've had people say that I don't know, people on Twitter complaining about me, but not in a systematic, large scale way. So I think, yeah, not yet.
Is it something you are worried about?
A little bit, because I'm a person. I'm out there with my own name. I'm not, hiding behind, anime avatars or anything. Yeah, I kind of. You never know. If people start harassing my family or something like that, it wouldn't be pleasant. There probably wouldn't be that, upset, but still, there's always a risk.
And so you're in Romania right now. Is the intransigent minority using woke culture there too? Is this a global phenomenon or just one in the West?
It is seeping in. I mean, our minority is not that intransigent, but I think it is part of a certain kind of like high status neoliberal culture that is high status. If you're coming from Romania, you speak English, you want to be part of, like the global hive mind of young people. If you go on the internet, this is mainstream. This is the culture. People, every one of my girlfriends here knows about, abortion laws in Alabama and who George Floyd is and all this type of stuff, because this is the soul of the internet. This is what, PepsiCo is thinking about. And this is what every advertiser on the internet is leveraging to, create their rage bait and segment their audience.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.